Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Genani and my partner name is Karimah Nurlatifah. Here I will present about literary history as a challenge to literary theory. Hans Robert Jauss. The first introduction. Hans Robert Jauss, one of the foremost figures of reception theory, in 1966 he became a professor at the University of Constance along with other prominent reception theory prominents such as Wolfgang Iser. Jauss' aim is to bridge the gap between historical and aesthetic approaches. As he states to literature, efforts to bridge the gap between literature and history, between historical and aesthetic approaches, began at the point where the two schools stop. Their method of understanding literary effects within the closed circle of aesthetics of production and representation. By doing so, they can deprive literature of a perhaps inalienable dimension of its aesthetic character and social function. Literary and reader relation that have aesthetic and historical implication. The first aesthetic implication lies in the fact that the reader's first acceptance of a work involves a test of its aesthetic value compared to the work that has been read. The second historical implication, what is clear from this is that the understanding of the first readers in the change of reception from generation to generation. In this way, the historical significance of a work will be determined and its aesthetic value becomes manifest. So that in this case, the historical meaning of the literary work will be determined and its aesthetic value will be clear. And for the literary history is a process of aesthetic acceptance and production that takes place in the embodiment of literary text on the part of receptive readers, reflective critics, and authors in their continuous productivity. Variation and correction define the scope, while change and reproduction define the boundaries of genre structure. The interpretive acceptance of a text always presupposes the context of the experience of aesthetics perceptions. Question about the subjectivity of interpretation and the taste of different readers of level of readers can be meaningfully asked only when one has first clarified the trans-subjective horizon on which understanding condition the influence of the text. The relationship between literature and audience includes more than just the fact that each work has its own specific historically and sociologically determinable audience, that each author is dependent on the environment, views, and ideology of his audience. For to question number 3, what is the function of the aesthetics of reception in criticism? Reception aesthetics serves to understand the meaning and form of literary works in a historical explanation of understanding an individual work. It functions as part of the ranks of the others' works. The aim is to find out its meaning and historical position in the context of literary experience. However, in the stage from the history of literary reception to the history of literature, the latter manifests itself as a passive reception process that is part of the author, which can solve moral and formal problems left by previous works and can present new problems for subsequent understanding. Because this open a chance in aesthetic behavior, the historical perspective of reception always find functional relationships between understanding of earlier works accepted and assist against the background of others' works of art as well. The background of everyday life experience. Its social function in the ethical realm must be understood according to the aesthetics of acceptance in the modality. Number 4. Uh, I will explain thesis 1 until thesis 4, and the next thesis 5, 6, 7 will be explained by Karima. Thesis 1. He need for an aesthetics of perception and influence. What does Jaws see as wrong about the positivist view of history? Regarding the literary facts that continue to grow and in the history of conventional literature is only a remnant of the process. It's just the best which is collected as and classified and hence not history at all. Anyone who considers such a series of literary facts part of the history of literature confuse the character of the important event of a work of art with historical facts. Thesis 2 need to trace the reader's expectation at the work's appearance, including an understanding of its genre, at intentions and level of discourse. An analysis of the reader's literary experience avoids the physiological pitfalls that turn to portray the acceptance and influence of a work in the system of objectifiable expectation that arise for each work at the historical moment of its emerge from a pre-understanding of genre, from familiar forms and themes of works, and from contradiction between poetic and practical language. Thesis 3. An aesthetic distance measures the disparity between the horizon of expectation and the appearance of a new work. The way a literary work at the historical moment of its emergence satisfies these points or refutes the expectation of its first audience clearly provides criteria for determining its aesthetic value. The distance between the horizon of hope and the work, between the familiarity of various aesthetic experience and the horizontal change by the acceptance of a new work. Thesis 4. The contraction of the horizon of expectation enable one to pose a question to which the text gives an answer, thereby discover how the contemporary reader could have viewed and understood it. Question number 5. Giles used the hermeneutic philosophical term horizon of hope to design the framework of expectation and assumption that unites the words of readers and writers in the constitution and interpretation of text. For it is only through the process of mediation that work enters a changing horizon of experience from a continuity in which a constant inversion occurs from simple acceptance to the critical understanding, from passive acceptance to active acceptance, from recognized aesthetic norms to a new production that transcends them.